Hello, Writing Rabble. It's your rabble rouser author, Chris Everhart, back with another session to help starting writers get started with some tools and ideas for outlining and filling out your story. And if you are an experienced writer, just looking for more perspective or looking to get going again, you're in the right place. I am here with my partner, Wes Nelson. Hey, Wes.
Hey man, how are you?
Good. How was your week writing and storytelling?
Good. I think I cracked. I was telling you earlier this week. I think I cracked a major issue that was holding me back with my goal change. Last week it felt a little thin, and I think it feels a lot thicker now, to use that sort of parlance. So I am excited. Um, I was texting you, I think yesterday. I was like, "Can I just start this dang thing?" And
Yeah.
it seemed like you were saying if I feel like my outline is strong enough, which of course spun me into a spiral of self doubt from
Got you
there.
thinking?
Yeah. So then
Yeah.
I went back to it yesterday. I went back to it today. You added some stuff today I saw about character, I think we're going to get into. And I
Yeah.
think I started filling some of that out. And I think once I look at that some more, I'm gonna just get cracking this week because I don't know. I feel like I'm ready, but I want to make sure I don't want to not waste. I don't want to go off and run out of road like you like to say. So, um, yeah, no, it felt really good. Of course, as soon as I feel like I solved that puzzle, I was like, all right, I'm done. And
Right.
then,
Yeah, you're finished. Yeah.
yeah, I'm done now. Yeah, and then I was like, oh wait, I actually have to write this thing. So,
Yeah, maybe
um,
Bob the Builder will come in or some elves and do your story while you're sleeping.
yeah, but it honestly feeling like these building blocks are really coming into place now, and
Mhm.
now the fun part is filling in with all the details and stuff. So I think, yeah, I'm excited, really excited
Yeah.
to get started.
Yeah, and I think, you're in the right zone there too, as you're excited to get going, is, you only want to prepare so much. I mean, we could sit here for 2 years and fill out every detail of every step on the story structure, and,
Yeah,
you'd never get anything started.
yeah,
And honestly, a lot of writers, that's where they go. People who are planners, they assume that if they plan hard enough, they'll be they're successful or be ready.
right.
But in a way, you have to start before you're ready, before you think you're ready. And I'm glad you asked that this week, because I was a little worried that I was holding you up at the planning stage. And a lot of this stuff that we are going to go through, as we started and go on, as far as the story hill goes, we can fill that in, and work it in as we go along.
Hmm.
So we're not etching your book in stone.
Okay,
Everything can be changed or modified as we go on. But I think you're feeling how important and how helpful it is to have these major story points to start with, right?
absolutely. It's a map now. It feels like there's a road map instead of just like blindly taking off into the forest. I feel like I can see the mountain where I'm supposed to get to. So,
Yeah.
no, yeah, it's really helpful.
Excellent. Glad to hear that. Well, I'm going to put up the uh, story, whatever we're calling it, the story hill. Thank you. Um, and let's take a quick look at that, and we'll see where you're at. Let's see. I'm going to hide the sidebar. There we go. That might be a little bit better. And let me bring it down just a tad. Okay. All right. So can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. And let me get the right format here. So we've got the right. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is the story hill that I created when you were needing to get started, and basically I put this together in a week, not including the additions and modifications and stuff. But all this stuff has been floating around in my head for years.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned last time, every time I start a new project, I, I, I dive deep and go down a rabbit hole trying to find a way to outline that will help me um, not spend too much time on stuff that's not going to end up in the book, and maybe getting a more clear more clear path to uh, to getting the book, getting the story down on the page. So I'm just going to adjust this a little bit so we have the a little better. All right. So a lot of stuff here, a lot of points, but then I broke them out further along in here. So let's go quickly to. Um, all right. So uh, acknowledging or paying attention to and considering these major story points. And if you're just listening, what we'll be posting this as a podcast. I will post this story hill at some point for people to grab and look at themselves. But just as we go along, the story hill, it's just a steep curve up and down. It's named the Story Hill in honor of our mascot, the llama, which is was featured in my book. The Writing Rabble, and just a fun way to do something a little bit different with it. And I also like this because as a visual thinker, I like the idea of climbing, 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 hitting a point, and then going to the other side and how steep it is. And then, as we talked about a little bit, Wes, that idea of uh, the first half and the story and the second half of the story kind of mirroring each other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you had said that this lent or this was helpful to you when you kind of went back and were analyzing your story. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it really shined a light on how important that goal change part was for me, because I used to think that the climax was the most important part. But if you look at the hill here, it's not really, it's at the end. So you're going to have to do, I was going to have to do a lot more before that. That can't be the most important part. So yeah, understanding that the flip the script goal change part was huge.
Yeah.
And it really helped define both sides of it, both sides of the mountain. So
Cool. And on the story hill, basically I've broken it into six parts. The first 10%, and at 10%, we'll call these turning points. That's a common word for it, where something significant happens that either propels the story or changes the story and gets us into the next phase. And then for the next 15% up to 25%, and by the way, 10% is around where the call to adventure comes in. And then around 25% is the inciting incident, which is the thing that propels or draws the protagonist into the new world and the adventure that's going to change them and change their world. And then at 50%, as you were mentioning at the top of the story hill, and at the break between, or the turning point between phase 3 and phase 4, that's the goal change, the flip the script moment. Where now I know a couple times last week I got it wrong, and I said that the story, the entire apparatus of the story would shift to a new but unrelated
oh,
goal, and I meant to say new but related goal, right? So
right.
the I don't want people to think that, oh no, it's unrelated. That means we got to go do a Monty Python thing, where nothing makes sense after this.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen the Holy Grail. But yeah, so a new and unrelated goal. In my example of this a really good example is Jaws, the movie, where for the first half of the story and climbing up the hill, Chief Brody is trying to avoid the shark and get away from it, stay away from it. And then at the 50% mark, that goal changes to him hunting the shark. Really significant goal change, and perfectly symmetrical and related. So then on the way down the right side of the story hill, our llama is kind of out of control because the story or circumstances are taking them on an adventure now. They're not, they're past the point of voluntarily embarking. And then we hit the 75% mark, which is where the antagonist seems to win, and then a low point, and then we go the next 15% goes to the 90% mark, which is where the climax is. That's the ultimate battle. And then phase 6 is, the chain. illustrating the changed world, the changed character, and establishing loose ends that will be picked up in a later story. Now, because I grew up on TV and movies, this is the way I think about story. I don't want
Yeah.
anybody to think that you have to write books this way because that's not the case. This is just the way that makes the most sense to me. And there are a lot of other resources out there. So, by all means, do some research if this doesn't work for you and find something that does. But I also believe that this is sort of the modern mass market fiction storytelling kind of format. Okay. And then we went through time, we went through the major points, major story points that are in red um, on the story hill, and most of these major points are at turning points, but some of them are in between. But I just felt that they were important sub points to to help you fill out your story.
Hmm.
So do you want to take a quick couple minutes and go through the our major points here?
Yeah,
So we
sure.
start out in the ordinary world. That's the first 10%.
Yep.
And what is your character's ordinary world?
So my character's ordinary world is he's a privileged man living his best life. He has everything he could ever want. He has a good job, good wife, good kids, nice car, nice house. He's coaching his kids' sports team. Everyone loves him. He closes all the deals. So we're kind of in that perfect state, as Bashir would say.
Okay. And the call to adventure at 10%. What is the call to adventure? The first indication that there is something more that requires this character's attention.
Yeah, a genie pops out of his chest when his dad dies. So he's
Okay.
going to have
Got it.
to deal with that.
Right on. So the next 15% is he's trying to avoid going on this adventure. He's got all his personal hangups and fears,
Yep.
but something happens at 25%, which is the inciting incident, and that's the event that propels or draws the protagonist into the world, the new world in the new adventure. What is that?
So his genie, we're calling it Adam for now.
Okay.
Him and so Russ and Adam get kidnapped by the local luck mob. So they're going to be thrust into the new world now.
Okay. And around this time is usually where the mentor or guide show up. The mentor is typically an older character who has a lot of wisdom and a lot of things to teach the protagonist. A guide is a important character who may not be a mentor, but will show the protagonist the important parts and how to survive in this new world. And does that happen for your story?
Yeah, I have a character from Russ's dad's past that shows up that knows Russ, knew his dad, and he shows up and he kind of represents a an alternate version of Russ's world where he maybe is down on his luck, hasn't had the most privileged of life, but is overall sort of happy and doing well. And he offers Russ a chance to sort of get out of this trajectory that he's on. So I think refusal of the call would be something in that vein. I kind of have mentor being also Adam, this the genie that pops out of his chest. So still kind of hammering those details out.
Okay. And what is the new world like that Russ is going into? What's happening and what are the challenges and characters going to be?
So it's all about farming luck. It's this underworld of people that they go around and they harvest bad luck from people that are experiencing bad things, and they sell this luck in a transmogrifying way to the elite, to the upper class, to this sort of inner circle of people that where everything seems to go right for them. And it turns out that it goes right for them because of this luck that they're inhaling or ingesting. And
Yeah, so
so,
there's an industry and an economy around this luck power.
yes.
Yeah. And
Correct.
by the way, if you missed the past couple of episodes, Wes is writing urban fantasy. So we went through genre, I think, in was that episode 2, which was
Yeah.
a really fun and interesting show. So the challenges of learning. Um, Again, this is something that might change, but it's a pretty good placeholder for now. In other words, what problems does Russ encounter while learning about this new world?
So he learns about what it takes to get this luck and the effect that it has on the people around him. So as he's farming this, he notices that the people that they're farming this from, that they don't get better, that things are actually getting worse for them. It affects the neighborhoods that they're in. I have a sort of rough idea about how Russ inhales some of this luck and it helps his daughter win a hockey game. But in
Mm,
order to do that, somebody on the other team falls and breaks their leg in a really freak and horrible way. And we're getting the sense that there's more consequences here and that it's not all just roses and stuff like that. So
nice. And what are the new skills that he's learning in this new world
he's
that he either
learning.
didn't have before or skills that he's had that are being developed?
Yeah, so he's learning about how this luck farming works. He's learning that when he uses this power, he has some skills and some powers. He has the ability to sort of channel electricity. He might be able to harness some wind power. Still working that out, but he starts to get a taste for that he can actually do more than what he thinks. Maybe he's lighter on his feet, he's faster, maybe he can run a little or jump a little bit higher. Eventually, he might learn how to fly. I'm not sure yet. So,
Okay, cool. But we've got a good start on that and an idea of what might go in there. So just before the turning point at 50%, he has what I call a sheltered world win, and that is a world, not a whirlwind, sheltered world win, meaning that he exhibits his skills, but in a lower stakes environment than the high stakes of the story overall.
so in this case, there is a really unwell person running around they're discharging fire extinguishers. They're pooping on cars. It's like this. It's this person that like it would feel good to harness the luck from them. That's what I'm trying to set up. Is like this is somebody who it'd be okay if we sort of tamed this person or calmed them or harvested some energy from them because they're just generally running amok and acting crazy and we can't have this. So Russ has this win where he's able to harness some luck or farm some luck from this person.
Okay,
And this person's going to show up later. So there'll be some characteristics that we'll lay the seeds for here. So then when they show up later, we'll recognize them again.
got it. Okay, and then when we flip the script, the goal change at 50%.
Yeah. So there's some kind of natural disaster that is occurring or will occur that all of the luck farmers, everyone in this economy thinks of this as like a once in a century farming event. They're going to make their entire, life's worth of money in this one instance. And it's really gross to Russ because that he gets a chance to see all these victims and these people and he starts to really relate to them. He sees a person that looks like the mentor or the guide that shows up earlier. He sees a person that looks like his dad. He starts to really identify and connect with these people on a human level. And so he can't just sit idly back now and watch as all of their horrible state of affairs is used against them and harnessed and will be, sold over to the elites so that their life can keep remaining good while these people's life just generally goes to hell.
All right. And then we talked about last time about the idea that um, in that phase 3, which is the upper part of the arc on the left hand side, heading up to the 50% mark, he's trying to get his power back.
Yep.
And then after the goal change, what is he doing
So he
in general?
realizes as well that he has sort of a flashback and he realizes why his dad left. And his dad left because he didn't want to use this early version of this luck. His mom and his dad were having an argument. His mom wanted to use it. His dad didn't. His dad knew the cost of this luck, so he left. He abandoned what Russ realizes. He thinks that he was abandoned, but he realizes that his dad wanted the best for him and didn't want this sort of life for him. So he plugged in the genie into his chest to make sure that he wasn't leaving him completely on his own, but he did leave. And that's where Russ realizes that he can't sit idly by anymore and go on with this. And he sort of has a reason now because he realizes that his dad wanted the best for him.
Got it. But what is he going to do that is his goal change?
So
What's the new goal?
he's gonna walk away from this inner circle. He's gonna walk away from the whole luck farming economy. And he's gonna turn his back on it. He thinks that he can
Or
now
he's
do
going to
this.
try.
He's gonna try exactly,
Yeah.
but not
So
so fast,
when what I
Russ.
was yeah, and what I was getting at was between 25 and 50%, he's trying to get his power back,
Yep,
and at that goal change after that, he's trying to get away from it.
yep,
Is that fair?
yes,
Or he could be trying to harness it for good rather than the evil black market that's going on.
yeah. More so, yeah, more so in there where he's trying to harness it for good. That's kind of where he's gonna
Okay.
try to what he's gonna try to do. Yep.
Yeah, I like that now that we're talking about it because that lends itself to a lot of future stories. Because remember, Rabble, that in today's fiction environment, mass market fiction, which is really what we're talking about, um, is it's typically series of books, and urban fantasy is quite a bit like that as well. It doesn't have to be, but if you want to tell a story and you want readers to follow you, then you want to write more books in this series. So. All right. And okay, so what are the challenges of applying on his new skills in that fourth phase between 50
So
and 75%?
now that he's no longer in with this like inner circle, he's no longer with this elite group, he's no longer in the luck economy. Um, the and I kind of have this mixed in with the unsheltered world attack is that the girl who broke her leg in that hockey accident, her dad shows up and he shows up with a succubus or some kind of demon and attacks Russ, kicks the crap out of him. Because Russ isn't the only one who can buy this luck and utilize it.
Uh-huh,
Um,
right.
so yeah, into the challenges of applying. Basically, everyone is a potential enemy now. He's on his own. No one's helping him, and he he's trying to maybe only farm luck from bad people, and he thinks he can assuage his guilt by only getting it from people that he thinks deserve to be farmed from. And so he's trying to desperately arm himself, and he's still trying to protect his family. So he's kind of all on his own, shooting from the hip, trying to figure this out.
Yep, good. And by the way, I forgot to mention the MacGuffin, which is right there in the middle. I always forget to mention that. The MacGuffin is simply the thing that everybody's chasing after. So in this story that Wes is creating, the MacGuffin is the luck power, right?
Yep.
Okay, got it. All right, then. So through his struggles in that phase four, Russ has what I call a false victory, and that means that his skills work to create a what looks like a win, even as he doesn't realize that he's walking into a trap or has fallen for a ruse created by the antagonist. So, does he have a false victory yet?
Not yet. I have some ideas. This whole section's kind of all blending together for me right now, but it basically relies on him trying to get the Adam, the genie back, and maybe they let him have him back because he's been now used up. So yeah, this part probably needs some more work for now.
Right. Yep. And the idea was that he gets Adam back. Adam doesn't have any more of the luck power in him,
Correct.
but because he was with Russ, literally inside Russ his whole life, he has a lot of wisdom regarding Russ and
Yep.
his family and also this luck power world that is going to help him later. But at that 75% mark, he fails. The antagonist wins. And do you know what that is yet?
Yeah. So it's kind of in that same vein. He realizes that not only have they been farming Adam, they've also been farming Russ because he is a genie offspring. So he was providing them with power as well. So that's kind
Hmm.
of leads right into that low point where everything's horrible, and now he's feeling like a husk of himself as well.
Yeah. Now, I know you said a minute ago that he hasn't had any help, but remember, wasn't there a character who's helping him but is actually working for the
Yeah,
antagonist?
yeah. So Bob was my antagonist, and now Bob is like a sergeant to the antagonist. So
Hmm.
Bob at first was helping him in. I should have mentioned this earlier. Bob was helping him in the beginning because they wanted to go farm luck, and Bob was kind of showing him the ropes because they at that point they were both working together. And then at the goal change, Bob is now kind of working against him on behalf of the antagonist.
Got it. And that is revealed probably at this 75% mark.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the low point at some time, but it's basically all is lost. Doesn't think that they can recover from it, but the character has an awakening, which, by the way, I've kind of moved that, I think, over to the inside arc, which is the character development.
Okay.
But have you identified what his Russ's awakening is going to be?
Yeah, he realizes that he can't. He needs to accept help. He needs to let go of his ego, and he needs to realize that he can't chase power. That there needs to be sort of an equilibrium to all of this. That as with the good and the with good comes bad, and when you have too much of one, you're going to get the other one kind of flooding in. I kind of had this idea, or I was looking up a bunch of stuff around this, and my whole thing kind of comes back to balance right now. And when there's too much of one, it's going to overpower, and you're going to get an onrush of the other because nature always wants to find its level. So he realizes that that's the awakening, and I a lot to hammer out here as far
Yep.
as how that's going to work in a detailed sort of way, but that's the idea I have right now.
Right. And what you have there is the essence or the kernel of your theme for the overall story, right? Which is something like balance over uh, greed or something like that, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, do you know yet what his new plan and his counterattack will be?
So,
And by the
sort
way,
of.
I want to point out too is that you don't have to write this stuff in order,
Okay.
right? You can write whatever your whatever idea you have now, you can write the climax and the counterattack before you have challenges of learning or whatever, right?
Okay.
It's just
Okay.
that when the book is when the first draft of the manuscript is done, we're going to go back and we're going to look at the story curve and make sure things are in order and that they link correctly,
Sure.
right? So
Yeah.
the thematically and plot wise and character development wise and for continuity, everything makes sense.
Sure.
So you could have a great idea about a climactic battle that you want to write or outline right now.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait to do that.
Okay.
It might change, but
Right.
part of the
Yeah.
fun.
My idea right now is that it's all going to take place sort of, it's going to start in the impound lot, looking up towards the Kenwood Water Tower. And that's sort of the HQ. They're going to have an epic showdown between Russ and the antagonist up at the Kenwood Water Tower. And it's going to come down to the antagonist using more and more and more of this power, and for Bob to sort of flow with that in kind of a Zen way and sort of counter his, increasing power with Russ responding with a version of his and sort of flowing with it and sort of neutralizing him in increasingly bigger and insane ways.
Got it. Okay. Now I should point out here that up to the climax, the climactic battle, and because of the transformation that the character has from their failure, the antagonist winning, and through the awakening and the new plan, is that they are combining now at this point. Before they were using only skills without the right wisdom. At this point, the protagonist is able to combine the wisdom with the skills, and that's what allows them to have a true win at that or after that at the end of this climax point. All right. So I'm sorry, and did you just say what that true win is?
Sort of. I mean, he basically allows the antagonist to use up all of his insane energy in a way. It sort of becomes unbalanced, spins off the rails type of thing, and Russ remains victorious. Very vague and nebulous sort of way of describing it, but
Yep.
that's the idea right now.
Good. Yeah. And I said too is that the this sequence between 75 and 90% is crammed with plot points and character development because at the climax, um, everything that has happened up to this point in the story is concentrated on that climax. So, and it gets right down to the essence of power, theme, and all those things. So that's why the climax is so important and why it's typically a huge battle of some kind. And then they have the true win, and then it's a little grayed out here, but loose ends, and that is what allows us to think about what the next story is going to be, right? So, do you know what that loose end is yet? What those loose ends
Yeah,
are?
yeah. So there's going to be a. He's going to. My idea is that he's visited by this sort of very wholesome seeming person, and he's going to be, enraptured with them and warmed by their presence, and he's overwhelmed with these now good vibes. So we're hinting at maybe the next chapter or the next installment will be with a person on the other side of the spectrum, but equally bad, but sort of like, and basically he's going to wake up in a field with a shovel in his hand and have no idea, and then
I
end of
love it.
book. Next
Yeah.
book will be, kind of in a different way. So,
Okay. Cool.
yeah.
All right. Well, how do you feel
So,
about the story points that you have outlined so far? How do you feel about the
well,
process and
every time to go back to the blanket thing, every time I pull on the blanket, another area pops up. I like my kind of first half. I like up to about, I'd say 60%. And
okay?
then from there on, I have some strong stuff and then some not so strong stuff. So I I want to look at that kind of middle section from challenges of applying to the new plan area.
Mm-hmm.
And when I that's kind of, I don't know, I need to spend some more time on that. I also just want to get going too because I'm getting very impatient.
Mm-hmm.
But that's sort of normal. So
Yeah. Right.
um,
And I just want to reiterate what we said last week is that and when you talk to writers, especially screenwriters, in what is considered a three-act structure in today's script writing and story writing, it's what they do is they say that Act Two, which is between the 25% and 75% mark that we've got here on the story hill, that is one act, but it's really two acts. It's split in two, but people seem to like to pretend that it's a three-act structure. But anyway, also that middle part is the hardest part to write. That's what always vexes authors and screenwriters is that middle part. I think it's called the saggy middle or something like that. That it for some reason it seems easier to get the beginning and the end than
yeah,
it does most of the story.
yeah,
Right? We kind of joked last week. You said, "Well, yeah, it's just that middle part," and I said, "Yeah, it's only the most of the story that's the problem."
yeah.
Right? Yeah, and so I hope that this that the story hill is at least helping you think of those things in a constructive way so it's not a complete and utter mystery about what needs
No,
to go there.
no, it's really helpful because it feels like it needs these points in order to make sense, and
Mhm,
it would be easy without this to just sort of skip ahead and try to connect A to C without connecting it to B in the middle there.
mhm.
So yeah, no, it feels helpful, and it's just frustrating because it just takes time to think this stuff through and to connect the equation and the formula in my head so it makes sense and doesn't seem like a shortcut. So
Yeah, and, we've talked a little bit too about how this is hard work to try to get it right. And it's something that, like I said, I've started 3 books before I learned to outline, and those 3 books kind of went nowhere because I didn't. I reached a point. Well, I was developing an interesting story and setting and characters and a little bit of conflict, and then I'd reach a point where I'm like, uh, okay, what do I do now? Right? And until I learned to outline, and it wasn't this outline technique, but just any outlining technique, I wasn't able to actually finish something. So that's a big part of it. And but it's not easy, you know. It's just that, really good, and like anything else, if it's done well, it looks easy and it looks obvious.
yeah, and
Um,
it looks so easy that it feels like I should just do it or be
mhm.
able to do it very quickly, and then I can't, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is hard for a reason.
Yeah, it's like I've read hundreds of books. I can do that.
Yeah, yeah. I watched Jaws. I got this.
Exactly, yeah. All I
Yeah.
have to do is copy Jaws over and over again and I'll be
Yeah,
fine. But even
yeah.
then, you probably wouldn't know what was working, right?
Right,
So
right.
that's kind of it's funny. And like, we've said the sausage, you see how once you see how the sausage gets made, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
All right. So, and by the way, I'm the antagonist is up there in the left-hand corner, and I drew a satellite with a dotted line sort of circling the whole thing because the antagonist can really be introduced anytime up to the climax, the 90% climax point. But, anytime as long as it makes sense to the story. I think it's interesting that you want to have that Bob character being Russ's guide all the way throughout, and then it's revealed that he was helping that Bob was really at every point that he seemed to be helping, Bob was really getting him closer and closer to the antagonist trap
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
was his job,
Right.
right? So and then once you have that twist, now he's fighting the antagonist,
Mhm.
right? Okay, cool. All right, so let's go down to quickly. All right, so these are some of the in between parts that once we kind of uh, have those dots to connect that are in red, the major, and some of the others that are in the major parts and turning points. Now we've got other things like early on, after the call to adventure, there's a refusal of the call and the pressure to change, along with some personality or rather character development that we're going to get into in a few minutes. After the inciting incident, he either makes a decision to go or is pulled. And there should be a threshold and threshold guardians. So in Star Wars, that's Luke going to Mos Eisley Spaceport into the cantina where there's all these weird characters, and the threshold guardians are the guys at the bar who hassle Luke before they get their arms chopped off. And in that, phase three, going up between 25 and 50%, they're going to meet allies and rivals. Allies are helpers, and rivals are people who have an agenda of their own and will actually sort of create resistance that helps the protagonist develop their skills. And in that time, also, in addition to new skills, the protagonist will get a new perspective, which they need in order to go on through the rest of the story and into the outside world. And after the goal change, this is when enemies show up, and the protagonist is going to be basically reacting frantically, trying everything they know to stay alive, to fight, to get what they think they want or need. There's a belly of the whale moment typically in Star Wars again. That is, they escape the stormtroopers by diving into the trash compactor, So they escape death or capture by going into a trash compactor where they'll get crushed to death, right? And that
Mhm.
has, its own symbolic nature as well. Um, the antagonist seems to be winning, and that more and more of the fighting frantically. There's group discord, and that's because the protagonist doesn't value his group, their wisdom or their methods. Um, and then after the fall, after 75%, there has to be the reconciliation either within the protagonist or between him and his team, or her and her team, right? And then they're sort of back on board and they're ready to go. Now, a lot of times this reconciliation happens during the climax and at the end of the climax,
Mm.
when team members who were dismissed or walked away show up, right? And say, "Oh, I'm here." It was Han Solo in Star Wars who shoots Darth Vader's wing and sends him flying off.
Sure.
And that enables Luke to make that the shot that blows up the Death Star. All right, now in the middle, and by the way, if I know I've said this many times, but all this is evolving, so things could change or adjust, get refined at any time. In the middle, in these blue points, this is what I was thinking of as character development throughout the story. Okay. One thing that I had forgotten that you and I talked about this week was I realized I had forgotten to, at the beginning of the ordinary world, before that 10% mark, is to introduce the wound and the flaw,
Hmm.
right? The character flaw. And we'll show you that right now. Okay. So here is the character arc. What do you think of that?
Oh wow, that's cool.
So these are important points. So I didn't want to leave them just kind of, crammed into the middle of the arc, the overall story hill. Um, these are important things that the character will go through on this adventure or throughout this story, because the protagonist is not only working at being successful in a mission or an endeavor, the most satisfying part of the character going through this is that they actually have to change within in order to be sufficient or wise enough to really defeat the protagonist, right?
Yeah.
So I broke these out in a little more in detail by the phase. And we're going on the left hand side on the way up the hill. We're going bottom to top, as far as I could tell, the things that have to happen in what order. And again, not etched in stone, may change, could go in a different order, but just a foundational, easy way to think about them. And on the right hand side, on the way down the story hill, we're reading them from top to bottom. All right, so I started here with the wound and the flaw. This is super important. And if you read about if you read about writing or watch videos or whatever, um, it's funny because it's not something that I remember learning early on about the character flaw, but it at some point entered or snuck in and became super important. And so I kind of understood the concept of the character flaw, but for me it was like more like oh, he has a bad temper, or she doesn't trust people, or it was an outward um, uh, m- misgiving or an outward action, so to speak.
Yeah.
But and I, forgive me, I can't remember where I learned this. I think it might have been from Sarah Cannon and Heart Breathings. So if you haven't checked out her YouTube channel, she's really good. Heart Breathings, I believe. I got one of her guides to story development, and she explained that every character has a wound, or the protagonist has a wound for story purposes. And that could be that I wrote that up in the guide that I had written for you. I wrote that up as being. I'm going to find that because I think it's important to get it. All right, here is your thing. Let me see if I can. I'm going to unshare that, and I'm going to share. Wait, Wes's story curve. Okay. All right. Can you see this?
Yep.
All right. So you're starting to fill out these things. That the okay, so here we go. And this again, I just put in this week. Again, could change. So the wound is psychic or emotional damage done at an earlier time in the protagonist's life. For example, in Star Wars, Luke was orphaned and lives with his aunt and uncle, right? No
Mm-hmm.
mom, no dad, stuck on Tatooine, right?
Yep.
So that's the wound, is that, he was orphaned. The flaw is what the protagonist believes deeply about himself or herself as a result of the wound. Okay. So, triumph over the flaw comes slowly and with a lot of work throughout the story, right? Different from a limitation. So, a limitation might be the character starts out broke and needs money, right? That's a limitation that can be fixed, it can be overcome, right?
So it's
But
more
the
of a material thing. It's not an internal thing.
Yeah, and somebody gave an example of, okay, the character has only one arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that can't really be, and yeah, maybe that idea of money isn't. Well, it could be, but it's overcome, right? So if the character only has one arm, they have to learn out how to do things with one arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that they can be overcome. The flaw cannot be overcome easily, right?
Okay.
So the triumph over the flaw comes slowly and with a lot of work throughout the story. And it might actually take many, many stories or books to to work through that flaw. And the example of the flaw is Luke believes he is as limited as his surroundings and routine on Tatooine, right?
Right.
So he has to leave and he has to go through the adventure in order to learn that he's not limited or as limited as his surroundings were,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
You couldn't walk up and tell him that and make him believe it,
Yeah.
right? He had to become a a Jedi. He had to become worthy of getting that medal from Princess Leia uh, at the end of the movie, right?
Right.
All right. So let's get back to our. All right. Remove that. Hello, floating head of death, and let's grab. We're just gonna get right back to. Oh, okay. I swear I'm gonna get this sooner or later. Add the screen. Okay, there we go. Okay. So we're starting with the wound and flaw. You need to know this about your character early on, or all this other stuff here, and even in the plot, it helps you develop the plot along the way because you're asking, what does the protagonist need to learn in order to make the next step, right? Especially at these major turning points. So that could be a big help um, in developing the story as you
Mm-hmm.
develop the character arc. So the protagonist has correct or mistaken notions and observations about the world that they're in. Okay, so uh, I think I use the example for Luke. He says, "Well, if there's a bright center of the universe, you're in the place that's farthest from it, right?" So
Yeah.
that is probably a correct thing. The mistaken notions that he has about Tatooine is that there is no way for him to get out of there without joining the Imperial Academy,
Mm.
right? He's mistaken in that because Obi-Wan Kenobi has been living nearby for years and is going to take him out of there.
Sure.
right? So, and then the protagonist has needs that are unexpressed that he doesn't or she doesn't know about, but
Yeah.
are going to be revealed and developed or satisfied by the story. Okay.
Okay.
And I put denial next to that just as a kind of a cue for me to think a little bit more about that they may be in some sort of denial about what is needed or what they need, but they do have wants which are expressed, right? Luke wants to join the academy and get out of Tatooine, right? And that may correlate somehow with expectations. All right, now in phase two, between the 10 and 25% mark, I think that the protagonist has skills and talents, right? They
Hmm.
just haven't been developed, right? Often.
Yeah.
But they also have fear of change and the unknown. So that's why they decline the call to adventure. They refuse. But at some point along the way, they start to learn or realize that that this is an insufficient world for them, and or they are an insufficient person compared to who they want to be and how they want to live. Okay.
Sure.
Um, Moving into that phase three and into the new world for them. First of all, they're confused, and there's the bull in the china shop um, uh, analogy phenomenon where they can't help but make mistakes. They step on people's toes,
Yeah.
they break stuff. That it's just a natural thing about going into a new environment with their old attitude, right?
Yeah.
And but in that next one up, the the character development point there is that they have to adapt to the new world, and that requires going from being a rigid thinker to a flexible thinker, right?
Okay.
They were fine being a rigid thinker here in their ordinary world, up to the inciting incident, right? Because it worked. They had their routine. But in this new world, they have to adapt in the way they think, or we don't have a story
Right.
because they
Like
won't be able to.
their
Go
house
ahead.
of cards falls down, and now they're open to it, and now they got to be flexible to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they sort of get beaten into being teachable,
Hmm.
and the things that they have to go through in order to get there. And
Yeah.
I also want to point something out too. And this is, and I've done it. I still do it. Almost every writer does it. Is we create these characters and we want to be nice to them.
Yes.
We just it's like, oh my god, he's like my baby. I don't want him to get hurt.
Yeah.
But as an author, you have to be kind of a sadist. You have to take them through the worst possible steps and put them in the worst possible situations.
Yeah.
So, and you'll feel that as you go on, where you're like, something's not working here. How come this is boring? You're like, oh, you're being too nice to your protagonist.
Yeah.
And that leads up to the false mastery I think we've talked about, and that is skills without wisdom, right? And they believe at this false mastery point that they have everything they need. We're good, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then as we pass that flip the script point, the goal change. Now the protagonist in phase five, between 50 and 75%, they're applying their skills without wisdom, right? They don't have the wisdom yet. They don't realize necessarily that they're operating on their old thinking that we started with, right? From their ordinary world at the beginning.
Sure.
And also this phase, I believe, and I can't quite articulate it. I think I tried last week when we talked that they're operating at a false or partial stakes level.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is they are trying like crazy to win or to fix the situation. But what is really being thrown at them is only a fraction, it might be a big fraction, but it's only a fraction of the true stakes of the story. So let's say life or death, right?
Yeah.
So, and maybe a good analogy is that Star Wars point where they're trying to get out of the Death Star. They're trying to get to the Millennium Falcon, right?
Yeah.
So they're getting shot at, they're running around, Luke, does the swing across the gap and, and all that stuff. But those stakes aren't as high as the ultimate stakes of the story. That's the best I've got so far. Any
Okay.
thoughts on that?
So like it's starting to get real, and it's maybe more real than it's ever been for them, but it's not completely life or death yet.
Yeah, you ain't seen nothing yet, kid, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're going to have frustration, which means that they try what they know harder. And their ego is majorly invested that they're running on, and maybe they don't realize that they're running on their ego,
Yeah.
which means I know what to do or I should know what to do. Um, and they're really going on self will, even though they don't realize that they are. Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like when Neo faces Agent Smith, he starts to believe that he can take him down, so he just fights harder.
Hmm.
But he's not actually using his power yet and stopping the bullets because he doesn't know, he doesn't have the awakening yet. So he starts to have this like win, but it's not like a true. Yeah, okay, I got it.
Cool. Yeah. Good example. So in this phase 5, the character has to go through an awakening, right? Which means that he wakes up to his limitations and also to the wisdom that has been available to him, that he's only willing to look at because he just got his butt kicked by the protagonist, right?
Yeah.
So his ego is basically crushed, and that gives him, with the ego out of the way, he can have an awakening, right? All right, and then we reaffirm the true stakes here. We got to win this or else.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to do this or I'm going to die. That kind of thing. Reaffirm the true stakes. And then the protagonist is also able to combine all the lessons and experience that have come before in this story up to now. And at this point, our protagonist is at the state of true mastery, and that means skills plus wisdom. He can use them together. And then in that phase 6, that last 10%, we demonstrate that he is restored as a person and or improved as a person, right? And that's
Yeah.
demonstrated. Uh, it's usually can be demonstrated by a simple scene, and we talked about this before. That early on, that Russ gets involved. Russ wants to be a good family man, but he gets involved with this underground mafia, so to speak, this magic mafia,
Yeah.
and his family comes into danger, right? And maybe his wife packs up and leaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because she can't stand the craziness anymore, or because he can't be honest with her about what's really going on because he
Yeah.
can't explain it, right? Well, at this stage, at the last stage, phase 6, that a restored or improved self could be demonstrated really in two ways. Well, multiple ways, but two that are seeming opposites. One is the family comes back
Yeah.
and trusts him again, right? The other is he decides to keep his family away from this environment.
Sure.
So he tells his wife, "Don't come home with the kids."
Yeah.
Right? So you see where his mastery results in a correct decision about what happens with his family, and which is his world, right?
Yeah.
And but even though they're seeming opposites, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Like his ego transforms into like confidence or something like that.
yeah, and it's about, and I'm going to write this down right now before I forget because this is a good one. It is worthiness,
Yeah.
right? So that's an important one. So I'm going to put that in there while I'm thinking because I will forget it. Okay, so worthiness is one of those demonstrations. Okay. All right. So that was a lot of talking. We're at just about an hour. And so what do you think? How are you feeling about the Story Hill and your progress so far?
I feel good. I like kind of having this slowly revealed has been helpful. It's all important stuff, but it's good to have it sort of dripped into my skull because at one moment it's too much, but it's all necessary. I feel like with this character development stuff, I feel like I can, if I get stuck on one side of the hill, maybe I can look to the other, and that might help fill it in, sort of coming back and forth. Um, so yeah, I feel good. I think I'm going to work on this 50 to 75% part more this week, and then yeah, I think I'm ready to actually put some words down here.
Okay. Yeah, I find it, and I mean, no fault at all, because I find that it can be difficult to make decisions about these details early on, and I tend to write my way into it and through it.
Mm.
The problem is it's not very efficient.
Yes.
I really I know that I could get a lot more projects done if I really tried to rigorously define and follow these steps
Yeah.
that that it would help me because I have so many ideas that it would help me probably flesh out more ideas, you know. So that is my challenge right now is, and the weird thing is that right now I'm working on book three, the first three books of a what hopefully will be a series, and I'm applying these major steps, right? And it's working because it's making me go, oh, dude, you don't have it. You got to figure this out.
Oh, okay.
And this is book three. I've already written two books on these characters in this world and this plot, right?
Yeah.
So right now I'm wondering, do I need to go back and apply this to the first two books, which are, it's going to happen eventually, or
So those aren't out yet?
no, no, they're for my publisher Coalescence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but I have promised to have the third one done, and all three of them having at least one run through by the end of April. So, I got to get on it.
That's in, yeah. Can you tell us anything more about that? Any teasers or?
Well, I could talk a little bit about it, and in fact, I might have you read the first two, just so you can get some perspective on it. Maybe help me walk through it. The story is about it's like a YA urban fantasy,
Okay.
and it's about a girl demon who lives in the highest ring of hell,
Oh, sweet.
and she turns 17. And when they turn 17 in this ring,
Yeah.
they get their demon face. And
Oh.
then they're able to come into the nearest towns and cities and haunt and screw with human beings.
Oh, fun. That
Yeah.
sounds cool.
Yeah. So I'm kind of mashing up a lot of themes about hell and demons and that kind of stuff. Um, and she's never felt like she belonged in hell, basically, right? And so she's learning by going into, and she accidentally um, is accidentally successful at evil things that she didn't intend to do.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that gets her better and bigger assignments and more important, and that puts her in higher stakes situations. And she's just kind of sort of fumbling through. In the
Cool.
first book, in the second book, she has to take some initiative, and in the third book, she's got to come back and try to save everyone and everything. Right?
Nice.
Yeah. So
That
it's
sounds
really
cool.
fun, but like I mentioned a few times now on the Writing Rabble episodes, that I I was having a lot of trouble picking the stories up and really going with them. I was sort of blocked. I don't like that word, but and I remembered that I had heard in a interview a writer say, if you're blocked, it's usually a structural problem.
Mm-hmm.
And my professional screenwriter friend, when I told him that, he said, it's always a structure problem.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize was that I was writing it as urban fantasy, but a little bit more on the thriller side. And that I remembered a long time ago, I heard the axiom that a thriller is a good guy, a bad guy, and a ticking clock.
Mm.
And I didn't have a ticking clock.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of boring well, what it was is that I couldn't find the reason for her to be doing what she was doing, right?
Oh, yeah.
There was everywhere I looked and every time I tried, the motivation was insufficient. Uh, it didn't match the stakes of the story, basically, which is heaven or hell may reign, right, on earth.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the stakes
Yeah.
if she doesn't uh, do her job or fulfill her duty or potential. So I couldn't I really struggled and struggled for months. I'm talking about, and I worked on other things during that time, but um, I just I couldn't find the motivation. Why I kept asking, why is she doing this? Why is she doing this? Why is she doing this? And then
Yeah.
when I remembered it, no ticking clock, then I was able to start putting it together.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was also missing rivals. She didn't
Oh.
have a rival, and so I found one for her. And so, yeah, so it's well, at some point very soon, I'll be able to, demonstrate that probably on the Writing Rabble and walk everybody through how I use the steps to. Well, and I also have one writing instructor, tell me that when I'm going down the rabbit hole and looking for these, number one, a grade A, faultless, fail safe outlines,
Yeah.
say that, well, he's like, yeah, I like to write the story and then compare it to the outlines and the story paradigms to find what's missing or how to construct it, which
Hmm.
is a good thought. I like that, but it hasn't worked for me
Oh.
that well. It hasn't gotten me to the level of the efficient, prolific writer that I want to be. So that's why I'm particularly excited about the Story Hill, and you asking me to help you get started. That it's forcing me to look through your eyes at this stuff. Becoming a beginner again, because I've been writing for 23, 24 years.
Oh man.
Yeah, so this is really helpful to me too, and that's why I keep
Good.
saying ask questions,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it'll help me clarify, what each of these things is, decide what may not belong there and has
Yeah.
to go, or decide what might need to be added. And hopefully, as I share this with more and more of the Writing Rabble, I'll get feedback from them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so I'm kind of putting this together as we go along, and we're going to try it and see what works.
Well, it's fun and I really appreciate it. It's been, yeah, I've gotten more out of this than I ever would have got. So no, it's awesome. Really appreciate
Sweet.
it.
All right, man. Glad to hear it. Glad to have you aboard too. All right. Anything else before we sign off?
No, I'm excited. Yeah, what should I have for next week, do you think?
Oh
Or
yeah, next week. What do you want to work on? I know you want to get started on writing the story, but you said you want to put some more steel into those
yeah.
mid story
Yeah.
plot
Mid to late
points.
story, I want to work on that some more. And then maybe I'll work on some scenes too or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So don't feel like you have to start the whole book right now, and don't
Okay.
feel like you're limited only to working on the plot points.
Yeah.
But, work on those. And when you get the bug or you want to sit down, write some scenes.
Okay.
And what are you using to write, by the way? What program?
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that because we talked about Scrivener a long time ago, and right now I've just got the Google Word doc that we have, and then I have my own kind of Word doc with just notes in it. So
Okay.
yeah, maybe we could talk about that next week.
Yeah, we need to talk about Scrivener because I want to give a little demo of that. I
Okay.
might also be able to create a template, a story template that that includes these plot points
Okay.
and everything, all of these plot points. And if that's the case, then that might make things even easier.
Okay.
Um, or at least, you'll have those charted on Scrivener and be able to fill those out, a little bit more. And
Okay.
I can't call up Scrivener right now because it wants to update. But yeah, let's talk about Scrivener next week. Um, we'll go over briefly where you're at with those middle plot points.
Okay.
We can talk a little bit about scenes that you're sketching out if you want, and I'll go over Scrivener. And I guess this week I'll go ahead and start that template. And then once
Sweet.
you get it, I may be able to just send you. I probably can just send you the template.
Okay. I'll get
All right.
Scrivener this week then.
Okay, cool. Hold on while I sign off here. All right, Writing Rabble, thanks for sticking with us. We're at an hour and 10 minutes, which is about where we usually are. We were a little longer last week. Today, we went over briefly all the major plot points from the story Hill, named in honor of our llama mascot. And then we talked through each of those, what Wes has so far for each of those story points. So what we're kind of doing is we're trying to put together a sort of connect the dots kind of outline, which is how I like to write. We want to know what those major points are that have to happen in the story, and then we can write in between them, and we can connect those dots with what is the actual story or the writing of it itself. And then we went over the character arc based on the story Hill, and I broke out in a little more detail what each of those character points are of growth for each of the 6 phases of the story Hill. And meantime, also over the past week, I've been filling in a a Google Doc that Wes has been using to do his outlines. So what I'm doing is I'm taking each of those points, I'm putting them into the Google Doc, I'm writing brief descriptions under that to be a little bit of a guide for him. And as we go along, this will evolve and grow or shrink as it may be needed. So I appreciate you guys being here, Writing Rabble, and remember that in the story description down there somewhere is a link, Amazon link to the Kindle version of my book, The Writing Rabble, which is it's called The Writing Rabble: How to Write Your Book, Write and Publish Your Books Your Way. And it's basically my experience and my hopefully encouragement for you. And I appreciate you being with us one more week. So until next time, Writing Rabble, button chair, words on page. Bye now.